A piercing scream echoed through the cool desert night, pulling Levi Sloane from his fitful sleep with a start. He sat up in bed, his heart pounding as he strained to hear the sound again, wondering if it had been real or just another nightmare, the kind that had haunted him since losing his wife 3 years ago. There it was again, unmistakably human, and coming from his stable. Levi grabbed his Colt revolver from the bedside table and hurried down the stairs of his modest ranch house. The wooden floorboards creaked beneath his bare feet as he moved swiftly through the darkness. He pulled on his boots by the door and stepped out into the cool September night of 1887, the New Mexico air crisp and clear beneath a blanket of stars. The scream came again, louder and more desperate than before, sending a chill down Levi's spine as he approached the stable. His lantern cast long shadows across the dirt yard as he moved cautiously toward the source of the distress. "Hello," he called out, pushing open the stable door, the familiar scent of hay and horses greeting him. "Who's there?" A strangled sob answered him from the back of the stable. Levi raised his lantern higher, illuminating the scene before him. There, nestled in the hay of an empty stall, was a young woman, her face contorted in pain, her dress soaked with sweat and something else, water or blood, he couldn't tell. "Please," she gasped, her eyes finding his in the dim light. "Help me." Levi froze for a split second as he realized what was happening. The woman was in labor, alone in his stable in the middle of the night. He set the lantern down on a nearby post and approached her slowly, holstering his gun. "My name's Levi Sloane," he said, kneeling beside her. "This is my ranch. What's your name, miss?" "Nora," she panted, gritting her teeth as another contraction seized her. "Nora Nash." "All right, Miss Nash," Levi said, trying to sound calmer than he felt. "Looks like you're having a baby." "I'm going to help you, okay?" Nora nodded, her auburn hair plastered to her forehead with sweat. Her pale skin seemed almost translucent in the lantern light, making the dark circles under her eyes more pronounced. She couldn't have been more than 25. "The baby's coming," she gasped. "I can feel it." Levi had helped birth countless calves and foals on his ranch, but never a human baby. Still, he knew enough to recognize that there wasn't time to ride for the doctor in Aztec. This baby was coming now, whether they were ready or not. "I need to check how far along you are," he said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "Is that all right, Miss Nash?" She nodded again, tears streaming down her face as she spread her legs beneath her sodden skirts. Levi lifted her dress just enough to see what he needed to. His suspicions were confirmed. The baby's head was already crowning. "Your baby's almost here," he told her, rolling up his sleeves. "When the next pain comes, I need you to push as hard as you can." Nora screamed as the contraction took hold, her body tensing with effort. Levi positioned his hands to support the baby's head as it emerged, talking to her in soothing tones all the while. "That's it. You're doing fine. Just a bit more." With one final, tremendous push, the baby slipped into Levi's waiting hands, a tiny, perfect little girl with a shock of dark hair. For a moment, the infant lay still in his palms, and Levi's heart nearly stopped. Then, as if sensing his fear, the baby took a shuddering breath and let out a robust cry that echoed through the stable. "You have a daughter," Levi announced, his voice thick with unexpected emotion as he placed the squirming infant on Nora's chest. Nora's tears turned to ones of joy as she gazed down at her child. "Hello, little one," she whispered, running a trembling finger over the baby's cheek. "I've been waiting to meet you." Levi found a clean blanket from his tack room and helped Nora swaddle the baby. He used his pocket knife to cut the cord, tying it off with a piece of clean twine as he'd seen done with livestock. "Thank you," Nora said, her voice weak but sincere. "I don't know what would have happened if—" "Don't think about that now," Levi said. You both need rest and care. Can you stand? I want to get you up to the house where it's clean and warm." Nora tried to rise but faltered, clearly too weak from the birth. Without hesitation, Levi gathered both mother and child in his arms. She weighed almost nothing, he thought, as he carried them across the yard to his house. Inside, Levi settled Nora and the baby in his own bed, then stoked the fire in the hearth to warm the room. He fetched clean water and towels, helping her clean herself and the infant as best he could while maintaining her modesty. "I'll ride for the doctor first thing in the morning," he promised. "But for now, you both need to rest." Nora looked up at him, her green eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and apprehension. "I can't pay you," she admitted. "I don't have anything." "I'm not asking for payment," Levi assured her. "Just rest now. We'll figure everything out tomorrow." As dawn broke over the ranch, Levi sat in a chair by the window, watching over the sleeping mother and child. Questions whirled through his mind. Where had she come from? Why was she alone? Where was the baby's father? But those questions could wait. For now, he was just grateful that both mother and child had survived the night. Nora stirred as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the curtains. She blinked awake, momentarily disoriented, before her gaze fell on her sleeping daughter beside her. "Good morning," Levi said softly. Nora startled slightly as if she'd forgotten he was there. "Good morning, Mr. Sloane." "Levi, please," she nodded, a faint blush coloring her pale cheeks. "Levi, how are you feeling?" "Sore," she admitted, "but better than I expected, considering." Levi poured her a cup of water from the pitcher on the nightstand. "I was about to head into town for the doctor. Is there anything else you need while I'm there?" Nora looked down at her sleeping baby, her expression turning worried. "I don't suppose there's a wet nurse in town. I'm not sure I can feed her properly." "Doc Jensen might know of someone," Levi said. "His wife just had their third child a few months back. She might be willing to help until your milk comes in." Nora nodded gratefully, though Levi noticed how she tensed at the mention of other people. There was a story there, he was certain of it. "Mr. Sloane Levi," she began hesitantly. "I should explain why I was in your stable." Levi held up a hand to stop her. "You don't owe me any explanations right now. Rest, recover. There'll be time for talking later." Relief washed over her features. "Thank you." Levi rode the 5 miles into Aztec with an urgency he hadn't felt in years. The town was just beginning to stir as he arrived, tying his horse outside Doc Jensen's house and office. The doctor, a portly man with kind eyes and a perpetually worried expression, answered his door still in his nightclothes. "Levi Sloane," he said, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "What brings you here at this hour?" "Someone hurt." "Not hurt, Doc, but I need your help." "A young woman gave birth at my ranch last night, in my stable actually." Doc Jensen's eyebrows shot up. "In your stable? Who is she?" "Her name's Nora Nash. Says she was passing through, found her in labor and delivered the baby myself." The doctor's expression grew serious. "And they're both alive and well?" "Yes, far as I can tell. Baby's a little girl, good lungs on her, but they both need proper care." "Let me grab my bag," Doc Jensen said, turning back into his house. "Martha," he called to his wife, "I'm needed at the Sloane Ranch. A berth." 10 minutes later, they were riding back toward Levi's property, the doctor's medical bag bouncing against his saddle. "So who is this woman really?" Doc Jensen asked as they rode. "I don't know much beyond her name," Levi admitted. "She was alone, scared. Didn't seem like the time for questions." "No husband, none that I saw or she mentioned." The doctor gave him a sidelong glance. "Unmarried mother, then. That'll set tongues wagging in town." Levi frowned. "She's a woman who needed help, Doc, nothing more, nothing less." Doc Jensen raised his hands in a placating gesture. "I'm not judging, Levi, just stating facts. You know how people talk. Levi did know, all too well. Aztec wasn't a large town, and news traveled fast, especially news that might make for juicy gossip. An unmarried mother taking refuge with a widower would certainly qualify. When they arrived back at the ranch, Levi found Nora sitting up in bed, nursing her daughter. She looked up with alarm when the men entered, instinctively covering herself with a blanket. "It's all right," Levi reassured her. "This is Dr. Jensen from town." The doctor approached with a kind smile. "Morning, Miss Nash. I hear you've had quite an eventful night. Mind if I take a look at you and the little one?" Nora hesitated, then nodded. Levi excused himself to give them privacy, heading downstairs to prepare breakfast. He scrambled eggs and fried bacon, the familiar routine of cooking helping to calm his racing thoughts. What was he doing? Bringing a strange woman and her newborn into his home. 3 years of solitude following Margaret's death, and now suddenly his quiet ranch was home to a small family. It didn't make sense, and yet he couldn't have done anything differently. He couldn't have left them in that stable or sent them away once the birth was over. Doc Jensen came downstairs 30 minutes later, medical bag in hand. "How are they?" Levi asked immediately. "Remarkably well, considering the circumstances," the doctor replied. "Mother's young and healthy, baby small but strong. You did good work, Levi." Relief flooded through him. "That's good to hear. She'll need rest, plenty of nourishing food, and someone to help with the baby. Martha said she'd be happy to come out tomorrow with some of Benjamin's old baby things, if that would help." "That's mighty kind of her," Levi said, grateful for the doctor's wife's generosity. Doc Jensen lowered his voice. "Levi, she won't tell me where she came from or why she's alone. I don't want to pry, but, well, there could be trouble following her." Levi frowned. "What kind of trouble, I don't know. But a young woman, clearly educated from her speech, traveling alone in her condition. There's a story there, and maybe not a happy one." The doctor placed a hand on Levi's shoulder. "Just be careful. Your heart's in the right place, but don't let it blind you to potential danger." After the doctor left, Levi carried a tray of food upstairs for Nora. She had dressed in one of his clean shirts, which hung like a tent on her slender frame, and was sitting by the window with her baby in her arms. "Doc says you're both doing well," Levi said, setting the tray on the bedside table. "I brought you some breakfast." "Thank you," Nora said softly. "For everything. You've been kinder than I had any right to expect." Levi pulled up a chair and sat across from her. "It's what anyone would do." "No," she said, her voice suddenly firm. "It's not what anyone would do. Believe me, I know." Levi studied her face, noting the way her eyes darted to the window at every sound from outside. Doc Jensen was right, she was running from something or someone. "The baby needs a name," Nora said, changing the subject. "I was thinking of calling her Hope. It seemed fitting." "Hope," Levi repeated. "It's a beautiful name." Nora smiled down at her daughter, and for a moment Levi caught a glimpse of what she must have looked like before fear and exhaustion had taken their toll, young, vibrant, full of life. "Miss Nash," he began carefully. "I don't mean to pry, but I need to ask, are you in some kind of trouble? Is someone looking for you?" The smile vanished from her face. She remained silent for so long that Levi thought she wouldn't answer. Then, almost imperceptibly, she nodded. "My father," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's a powerful man in Santa Fe. When he discovered I was with child, he was furious. He wanted me to go away to an institution back east where I could have the baby in secret and give it up for adoption." She held Hope closer to her chest. "I couldn't do it. I couldn't give her up, so I ran." "And the baby's father?" Levi asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "Dead," Nora replied flatly. "Typhoid took him before I even knew I was expecting. We were to be married this past spring." Levi felt a pang of sympathy. A young widow in spirit if not in law, cast out by her family. It was a cruel fate. I understand if you want us to leave, Nora continued. I've imposed on your kindness enough. Once I'm stronger, we'll move on. No, Levi said, the word coming out more forcefully than he intended. No, he repeated more gently. You're not imposing, and you're in no condition to travel, especially not with a newborn. You'll stay here at least until you're both stronger. And then what? Nora asked, her eyes searching his. My father won't stop looking for me. He has connections, resources. He'll find us eventually. Levi hadn't thought beyond the immediate future, but now an idea took shape in his mind, an idea so unexpected and yet so simple that it almost took his breath away. What if, he began slowly, what if you had a husband? Nora's brow furrowed in confusion. What do you mean? I mean, what if you weren't Miss Nora Nash anymore but Mrs. Levi Sloane? What if Hope was born in wedlock to a respectable rancher and his wife? Would your father still pursue you then? Nora stared at him, speechless. Are you proposing marriage to me? She finally managed. You don't even know me. I know you're a mother who loves her child enough to risk everything, Levi said. I know you're brave and strong. And I know that I have a big house with too many empty rooms and a heart that's been lonely for too long. He leaned forward, his eyes earnest. I'm not asking for love, Nora. I'm offering protection for you and for Hope. My name, my home, my promise to care for you both. Tears welled in Nora's eyes. Why would you do this for strangers? Levi thought of his late wife, of the child they'd never had the chance to conceive before illness took her. He thought of the 3 years he'd spent alone on this ranch, going through the motions of living without really being alive. Because it's the right thing to do, he said simply. And because maybe, just maybe, we could help each other heal. Nora looked down at Hope, sleeping peacefully in her arms, unaware of the momentous decision being made. People will talk, she said. They'll know the timing doesn't add up. Let them talk, Levi replied with a shrug. We'll say we were married in secret before I left for a cattle drive. Say Hope came early. Or say nothing at all, it's no one's business but ours. Hope stirred in her mother's arms, making small mewling sounds. Nora adjusted her hold, soothing the infant with a gentle touch that spoke volumes about the kind of mother she would be. If I accept, she said carefully, I want to be clear about what this arrangement means. I won't be a burden. I can cook, clean, help with the ranch. I'll earn my keep. This isn't about keeping accounts, Levi said. This is about giving Hope a family and keeping you both safe. And what about marital obligations? Nora asked, a blush rising to her cheeks. Levi felt his own face warm. There are no obligations. We'll share this house as friends, as partners if you wish, but nothing more unless that changes someday by mutual choice. Nora was quiet for a long moment, considering his offer. When she spoke again, her voice was steady with newfound resolve. Then yes, Mr. Sloane, I accept your proposal. Levi felt a weight lift from his shoulders, even as a new responsibility settled there. Then I'll ride for the preacher this afternoon if you feel up to a small ceremony. Nora nodded, a tentative smile playing at her lips. I do. That afternoon, Reverend Thomas came to the ranch, Bible in hand and curiosity written plainly on his face. Levi had given him a simplified version of events, that Nora was a young widow whose husband had died before learning of the pregnancy, that they had met during his travels and fallen in love, and that he wanted to give her child his name. Whether the Reverend believed this story or not, he performed the ceremony in Levi's bedroom, with Doc Jensen and his wife Martha as witnesses. Martha had brought a simple white dress that had belonged to her sister, which hung loosely on Nora's postpartum frame, but lent a touch of formality to the occasion. Do you, Levi James Sloane, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? Reverend Thomas asked, his voice carrying the weight of holy authority. I do, Levi answered, surprised by the steadiness in his voice. And do you, Nora Elizabeth Nash, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? Nora looked up at Levi, her green eyes filled with a complex mixture of emotions: gratitude, uncertainty, hope. I do, she said softly. Then, by the power vested in me by God and the territory of New Mexico, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. Levi hesitated, then leaned forward and placed a chaste kiss on Nora's cheek. The gesture was brief but oddly intimate, sealing their unusual pact. Congratulations, Doc Jensen said, clapping Levi on the shoulder. Never thought I'd see the day you remarried. Martha Jensen bustled around the room, cooing over baby hope and offering practical advice to Nora about nursing and infant care. I've brought some of Benjamin's old things, she told them. Blankets, gowns, even a cradle that my husband can help Levi bring in from our wagon. That's very kind, Nora said, genuine gratitude in her voice. Nonsense, it's what neighbors do, Martha replied. Besides, it's all just gathering dust at our place. Better it gets some use. She lowered her voice conspiratorially. And between us, I think it does my husband good to see these things going to a new baby. Makes him less likely to suggest we try for a fourth. That evening, after their guests had departed, Levi and Nora found themselves alone together, husband and wife in name, strangers in reality. I'll sleep in the spare room, Levi said, gathering a pillow and blanket from the chest at the foot of the bed. You and Hope take the master bedroom. Thank you, Nora said, watching him from her perch on the edge of the bed, Hope nestled in her arms. For everything. I don't know how I'll ever repay your kindness. There's nothing to repay, Levi assured her. Get some rest. Tomorrow's another day. As he turned to leave, Nora called after him. Levi, he paused at the door. Yes, I hope someday I can be a real wife to you. The kind of wife you deserve. Levi felt a warmth spread through his chest, a sensation so foreign after years of numbness that he almost didn't recognize it as hope. Good night, Mrs. Sloane, he said softly, and closed the door behind him. In the days that followed, they established a routine of sorts. Levi would rise early to tend to the ranch work, feeding the horses and cattle, mending fences, all the endless tasks that came with managing his modest spread. Nora would care for Hope, and as her strength returned, began taking over the household duties, cooking meals, washing clothes, keeping the house tidy. They moved around each other carefully at first, like dancers unfamiliar with the steps, each hyper-aware of the other's presence. But gradually, the awkwardness began to fade, replaced by a comfortable rhythm of shared domesticity. A week after Hope's birth, Nora ventured outside for the first time, carrying her daughter wrapped snugly against the October chill. She found Levi in the corral, working with a young Palomino mare. She's beautiful, Nora called out, admiring the golden horse with her flowing white mane. Levi looked up, surprised to see her. Should you be up and about already? I'm fine, Nora assured him. Better than fine, actually. It feels good to breathe fresh air again. She approached the fence, Hope secure in her arms. What's her name? Doesn't have one yet, Levi said, patting the mare's neck. Just got her last month at an auction in Durango. Been breaking her for riding, but she's still skittish. Nora reached out a hand, and to Levi's surprise, the mare stretched her neck to sniff at her fingers. She just needs patience and trust. Levi watched as the normally temperamental horse nuzzled Nora's palm. You have a way with her. I grew up around horses, Nora explained. My father breeds them in Santa Fe. It was the one thing we shared before. She trailed off, her expression clouding. You miss it, Levi observed, being around horses. Yes, she admitted, very much. Would you like to help with her training once you're fully recovered, of course? Nora's face lit up. I'd love that. Good, Levi said with a nod. She's yours then. What? No, I couldn't possibly. Every ranch wife needs her own horse, Levi said firmly, and she seems to have chosen you already. Nora blinked back unexpected tears. Thank you, I'll call her Sunbeam. Sunbeam, Levi repeated, testing the name. It suits her. Later that evening, as they sat at the kitchen table sharing a simple supper of beef stew and cornbread, Nora broached a subject they'd both been avoiding. People in town will be curious about me, about us. What should I tell them when I meet them? Levi considered the question as he broke off a piece of cornbread. The truth, more or less, that we met while I was on a cattle drive to Santa Fe earlier this year, that we married in secret because your father disapproved, that you came to join me once he discovered the marriage and disowned you. And Hope? Nora asked. She clearly wasn't conceived after we supposedly met. Hope is my daughter, Levi said firmly. Born a bit early, perhaps, but mine in every way that matters. Anyone who suggests otherwise will answer to me. Nora reached across the table and squeezed his hand impulsively. You're a good man, Levi Sloane. The touch of her hand on his sent an unexpected jolt through him. It had been so long since he'd experienced such a simple human connection that even this brief contact felt momentous. He saw in her eyes that she felt it too, this strange spark between them. She withdrew her hand quickly, a blush coloring her cheeks. I should check on Hope, she murmured, rising from the table. Levi watched her go, aware of a shift in the atmosphere between them, subtle but unmistakable. Something was changing, evolving from necessity into. What exactly? He wasn't sure, but for the first time in 3 years, he found himself curious about what the future might hold. The following Sunday, Nora felt strong enough to accompany Levi to church in Aztec. It would be her first public appearance as Mrs. Sloane, and she was understandably nervous. Everyone will be staring, she fretted, adjusting her borrowed dress in the small mirror of Levi's their bedroom. What if they ask questions I can't answer? What if they don't believe our story? Then they don't believe it, Levi said simply, adjusting his tie. Their opinions don't change what's real between us. Nora turned to look at him, a question in her eyes. And what is real between us, Levi? The question caught him off guard. A partnership, he said after a moment. A family for Hope's sake, and maybe friendship at least. Yes, Nora agreed softly. Friendship. I'd like that. They rode into town in Levi's wagon, Hope nestled securely in a basket between them. The journey was slow and careful, Levi mindful of every bump in the road that might disturb the infant or cause Nora discomfort. As predicted, their arrival at the small white church caused quite a stir. Whispers followed them as Levi helped Nora down from the wagon, then gathered Hope's basket in his arms. Levi Sloane with a wife and baby. When did this happen? Must be why he's been scarce in town lately. Awful sudden, isn't it? That baby looks mighty new. Levi ignored the murmurs, keeping a protective hand at the small of Nora's back as they made their way inside. He nodded greetings to familiar faces, introducing Nora simply as my wife, without elaboration. They took a seat in a pew near the back, and Levi felt a surge of pride as Nora held her head high despite the curious stares directed their way. Hope slept peacefully throughout the service, only stirring once when Reverend Thomas's sermon reached a particularly emphatic point. After the service, they couldn't avoid the crush of curious townsfolk. Martha Jensen came to their rescue, taking Nora under her wing and steering her toward a group of young mothers who were more interested in cooing over Hope than interrogating her parentage. Quite a surprise you've sprung on the town, Sloane, drawled Henry Wilkins, the owner of Aztec's general store. Never figured you for the marrying kind, not after Margaret. Life has a way of surprising you, Levi replied evenly. Indeed it does, Henry agreed, his eyes twinkling. Well, you tell that pretty wife of yours that she's welcome at the store any time. Been too long since we had a new face in Aztec, especially one so easy on the eyes. Levi forced a smile, suppressing the unexpected surge of possessiveness he felt at Henry's admiration of Nora. I'll tell her. By the time they left the church, the initial shock of their appearance seemed to have worn off, replaced by a general acceptance tinged with lingering curiosity. Nora had handled herself with grace, answering questions vaguely but pleasantly, deflecting the most probing inquiries with gentle humor. You did well in there, Levi told her as they drove home. Better than well, you charmed them all. Nora smiled, bouncing Hope gently in her arms. It wasn't as terrifying as I expected. Your neighbors seem kind for the most part. They are, Levi agreed. A few busybodies, of course, but good people overall. The Jensens especially, Nora said. Martha invited me to join her sewing circle on Thursday. She said they make quilts for new babies and families in need. You should go, Levi encouraged. It would be good for you to make friends here. Nora nodded, though he noticed a shadow cross her face. What is it? He asked. I was just thinking, she said hesitantly, about how easily I seem to be slipping into this new life, as if my old one never existed, and I wonder, is that a betrayal of who I was before? Levi considered her question carefully. I don't think so, he said finally. The girl you were in Santa Fe is still part of you. She's just growing into someone new, someone stronger, maybe. Nora glanced down at Hope, then back at Levi. Someone who belongs here. If you want to, Levi said, his voice gentle. This can be your home for as long as you choose. As autumn deepened into winter, the bond between Levi and Nora grew stronger with each passing day. They were still navigating the complex territory between friendship and something more, but there was an ease to their interactions now, a comfortable familiarity that felt increasingly natural. Hope thrived under their care, growing plumper and more alert by the day. She had her mother's green eyes and what looked to be her father's dark hair, a detail that added credibility to their story of being her parents, though only Nora knew the truth of her paternity. December brought the first heavy snow to the ranch, transforming the landscape into a glittering white expanse that stole Nora's breath when she looked out the window one morning. It's beautiful, she gasped, holding Hope up to see the winter wonderland. Look, sweetheart, your first snow. Levi came to stand beside them at the window, close enough that Nora could feel the warmth radiating from his body. Wait until you see how it looks on the mesas at sunrise, he said. Like God took a paintbrush to the world. Nora turned to look at him, struck by the poetry in his usually practical speech. I'd like to see that, she said softly. Tomorrow, he promised. I'll take you up to the North Ridge before dawn, best view in the county. True to his word, Levi woke Nora before sunrise the next morning. They bundled up against the cold, left Hope sleeping in Martha Jensen's capable hands. The doctor's wife had come to stay the night for this purpose, and rode out on horseback just as the eastern sky began to lighten. Nora rode Sunbeam, who had indeed become her horse in the past months. The mare had proven to be intelligent and responsive, forming a bond with Nora that Levi found remarkable to witness. They reached the North Ridge just as the first rays of sun peeked over the horizon. Levi had been right, the view was spectacular. The snow-covered mesas glowed pink and gold in the early light, the shadows deep blue in contrast. The vast New Mexico sky seemed to stretch forever above them, a canvas of pale lavender and rose. Oh, Levi, Nora breathed, her words forming white puffs in the cold air. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. He watched her face as she took in the vista, finding her wonder more captivating than the landscape. "Yes," he agreed, though his eyes remained on her. "Beautiful." Nora turned to find him looking at her with an intensity that made her heart skip. For a long moment, they simply gazed at each other, something unspoken passing between them. Then Levi reached out and brushed a snowflake from her cheek, his fingers lingering against her skin. "Nora," he said, his voice husky, "I know this began as an arrangement, a way to protect you and hope. But I want you to know, my feelings have changed." Her breath caught in her throat. "Changed how? I care for you," he said simply. "More than I expected to, more than I thought I could after Margaret." Nora's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I care for you too, Levi. So much that it sometimes frightens me." "Why does it frighten you?" he asked, moving his horse closer to hers. "Because it wasn't supposed to happen this way," she admitted. "I wasn't looking for love when I ran from Santa Fe. I was just trying to survive to keep my baby, and now." "And now?" he prompted when she faltered. "Now I can't imagine my life without you in it," she finished in a whisper. Levi reached across the space between their horses and took her gloved hand in his. "Then don't," he said. "Don't imagine it. Be my wife in truth, not just in name. Let me be Hope's father in every way that matters." A single tear spilled down Nora's cheek. "Are you sure? Once word gets back to Santa Fe, my father will know where I am. He could make trouble for us." "Let him try," Levi said, a protective fierceness in his voice that she'd never heard before. "You're my family now, you and Hope. I'll defend you with everything I have." Nora squeezed his hand, her heart too full for words. Then, acting on impulse, she leaned across the space between them and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was brief but perfect, a promise, a beginning. When they pulled apart, Levi's expression was one of wonder. "Mrs. Sloane," he said with a smile that reached all the way to his eyes, "I believe we should head home to our daughter." "Yes," Nora agreed, her own smile radiant despite the cold. "Let's go home." That night, after Martha Jensen had returned to town and Hope was sleeping soundly in her cradle, Levi and Nora stood facing each other in the bedroom they had shared but not shared for months. "Are you sure?" Levi asked, his voice gentle as he took her hands in his. "I'm sure," Nora replied, stepping closer to him. "I want to be your wife, Levi, in every way." He kissed her then, slowly and tenderly at first, then with growing passion as she responded in kind. Years of loneliness fell away as they came together, finding in each other the healing they both so desperately needed. Later, as they lay wrapped in each other's arms, Nora traced the contours of Levi's face in the moonlight filtering through the window. "Tell me about her," she said softly. "About Margaret. I want to know the woman you loved." Levi was quiet for a long moment, and Nora worried she had crossed a boundary. But then he began to speak, his voice low and filled with memories. "She was kind," he said, "endlessly kind, and stronger than anyone knew. She kept this ranch running during the drought of '83 when I was laid up with a broken leg from a horse that threw me. Never complained, not once, even when things looked their bleakest." Nora listened as he shared stories of his first wife, their courtship, their wedding, the plans they'd had for children before tuberculosis claimed her. She felt no jealousy, only gratitude for the woman who had shaped the man Levi had become. "She would have liked you," Levi concluded, pressing a kiss to Nora's forehead. "She always said I was too serious, that I needed someone who would remind me to see the beauty in life." "And do I?" Nora asked. "Remind you?" "Every day," he assured her, drawing her closer. "Every single day." As winter gave way to spring, Nora and Levi settled into their life together with a contentment neither had expected to find again. Hope grew and thrived, learning to roll over, sit up, and eventually crawl, exploring her world with fearless curiosity. Nora had become a familiar face in Aztec, joining Martha Jensen's sewing circle and occasionally helping out at the general store when Henry Wilkins' wife was unwell. The initial whispers about her sudden appearance had faded, replaced by acceptance and even friendship from many of the townsfolk. Levi found himself smiling more, laughing often, rediscovering joy in simple pleasures. Hope's delighted giggles when he tossed her into the air, Nora's voice singing lullabies in the evening, the sight of wildflowers his wife had arranged on the kitchen table. In April, as the desert bloomed with unexpected color, they celebrated Hope's half-birthday with a small gathering at the ranch. The Jensens came, along with Reverend Thomas and a few other friends they'd made in town. Watching Nora move among their guests, confident and at ease with Hope on her hip, Levi felt a surge of pride and love so intense it nearly overwhelmed him. "You've done well for yourself, Sloane," Doc Jensen said, coming to stand beside him. "Never seen you look so happy, not even when Margaret was alive. Begging your pardon for mentioning her," he added hastily. "No offense taken," Levi assured him. "Margaret will always be part of me, but Nora—" He watched as his wife laughed at something Martha said, her head thrown back, sunlight catching in her auburn hair. "Nora's my future." In May, a letter arrived that shattered their hard-won peace. Nora recognized the handwriting immediately, her face draining of color as she stared at the envelope in Levi's hand. "It's from my father," she whispered. They sat together at the kitchen table as she read the letter with trembling hands. Hope played on a blanket nearby, oblivious to the tension filling the room. "He knows I'm here," Nora said, her voice hollow. "Someone from Aztec was in Santa Fe on business and mentioned the rancher Levi Sloane and his new wife and baby. It didn't take him long to connect the dots." "What does he want?" Levi asked, his jaw tight. "To see me, to meet his granddaughter." Nora looked up, fear and confusion warring in her eyes. "He says he's forgiven me for running away, that he wants to reconcile." Levi chose his words carefully. "Do you believe him?" Nora reread the letter, searching for hidden meaning between the lines. "I don't know. My father has never been one to admit mistakes or change his mind, but this sounds different somehow, more humble than I've ever known him to be." "What do you want to do?" Levi asked, reaching across the table to take her hand. "Whatever you decide, I'll support you." Nora squeezed his fingers gratefully. I think I need to see him, not for my sake, but for Hope's. She deserves to know her grandfather if he truly wants to be part of her life." "Then invite him here," Levi suggested. "On our territory where you feel safe and in control." Nora nodded slowly. "Yes, that would be best." She wrote to her father that evening, a careful letter inviting him to visit the ranch in 2 weeks' time. As she sealed the envelope, she looked up at Levi with uncertainty clouding her features. What if this is a mistake? What if he tries to take Hope? Levi knelt beside her chair and took both her hands in his. "Listen to me, Nora. No one is taking our daughter anywhere. Hope is legally my child now. Your father has no claim on her. And more importantly, she's ours in heart and soul. Nothing can change that." Nora rested her forehead against his. "Promise me we'll be all right." "I promise," Levi said, and sealed his vow with a kiss. The 2 weeks that followed were tense with anticipation. Nora threw herself into preparing for her father's visit, cleaning the already tidy house, planning elaborate meals, fretting over what Hope should wear. "He won't care if the curtains are freshly washed," Levi pointed out gently as he watched her scrubbing them in a tub of soapy water. "You don't know my father," Nora replied, wringing out the fabric with more force than necessary. "He notices everything and judges accordingly." Levi took the wet curtain from her hands and hung it on the line to dry, then pulled her into his arms. "And what if he does judge us? What if he doesn't approve of this ranch or me or the life we've built? Would that change anything for you? Nora looked up at him, her expression softening. No, she said firmly. Nothing could change how I feel about our life together. I suppose I still crave his approval after all this time. Foolish, isn't it? Not foolish, Levi assured her. He's your father. It's natural to want his acceptance. On the appointed day, they waited on the porch as a fine carriage pulled by two matched bay horses came up the drive. Nora stood straight-backed beside Levi, hope in her arms, her face a mask of composure despite the tension radiating from her body. The man who stepped down from the carriage was tall and distinguished, with silver-streaked dark hair and the same piercing green eyes as Nora. He wore an expensive suit, despite the dust of travel, and carried himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to authority. "Father," Nora said, her voice remarkably steady, "welcome to our home." Nicholas Nash removed his hat and climbed the porch steps slowly, his eyes never leaving his daughter's face. "Nora," he said, his deep voice betraying a hint of emotion, "you look well." An awkward silence fell between them until Levi stepped forward, extending his hand. "Levi Sloane, sir. It's a pleasure to meet you." Nash hesitated for just a moment before shaking Levi's hand. "Mr. Sloane, I've heard quite a bit about you from my sources in town." "All good things, I hope," Levi replied with a calm he didn't entirely feel. "Mixed reviews," Nash said with the ghost of a smile. His gaze shifted to Hope, who was watching him with curious eyes. "And this must be my granddaughter." Nora adjusted Hope in her arms so her father could see her better. "This is Hope Elizabeth Sloane." Something flickered in Nash's expression, recognition, perhaps, or memory. "Elizabeth was your mother's name." "Yes," Nora said softly. "I wanted Hope to have a connection to her heritage." Nash reached out tentatively, his finger brushing Hope's cheek. The baby grabbed it with surprising strength, earning a genuine smile from her grandfather. "She has your spirit," he told Nora, "and your mother's eyes." The ice broken by Hope's innocent gesture, they moved inside for the meal Nora had prepared. Conversation flowed more easily than expected, focusing on neutral topics: the ranch, the weather, developments in Aztec and Santa Fe. After dinner, when Hope had been put down for her evening nap, Nicholas Nash finally broached the subject they'd all been avoiding. "I owe you an apology, Nora," he said, setting down his coffee cup. "My reaction when you told me about the baby was inexcusable. I was thinking of our family's reputation, not your well-being or the child's." Nora's hands trembled slightly in her lap. "You wanted me to give her up," she said, the pain of that betrayal still evident in her voice. "I was wrong," Nash admitted, surprising both Nora and Levi with his frankness. "After you left, I had a great deal of time to think. Your mother would have been ashamed of me, and rightly so." He looked directly at Levi. "When I heard my daughter had married a rancher in Aztec, I was skeptical, I admit. I assumed it was a marriage of convenience, perhaps even coerced." "It wasn't," Levi said firmly. "So I've gathered," Nash replied, glancing between them with shrewd eyes. "Whatever the circumstances of your meeting, it's clear there's genuine affection between you now. Nora has always been a poor liar. Her face reveals everything she feels. And when she looks at you, Mr. Sloane, I see love." Nora blushed but didn't contradict her father. "I am happy here, father, truly happy. Levi is a good husband and a wonderful father to Hope." Nash nodded slowly. "I can see that. And while this isn't the life I imagined for you, Nora, I can't deny that it seems to suit you." He leaned forward, his expression earnest. "I've come here not just to see you, but to ask your forgiveness, and to offer you a place in my life again if you'll have it." Tears welled in Nora's eyes. "I never wanted to lose you, father. I just couldn't sacrifice my child." You shouldn't have had to make that choice, Nash acknowledged. I was blinded by pride and fear of scandal, but I'm an old man now, and I've learned that some things matter far more than society's opinion. He reached into his jacket and withdrew a document, placing it on the table between them. This is a deed to a property I own just outside of Aztec, the old Wilson place, if you're familiar with it. It's my gift to Hope, her inheritance from her grandfather. The house needs work, but the land is good. Better than good. Levi recognized the property, a handsome spread with natural springs and excellent grazing land that had been sitting vacant since old man Wilson died 2 years back. It was worth a small fortune. "Father, we can't accept," Nora began. "You can and you will," Nash interrupted with a flash of his old authority. "I have more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes, Nora. Let me do this for my granddaughter, for my family." The word family hung in the air between them, a bridge across the chasm that had separated father and daughter. "Thank you," Levi said, accepting the document with the respect it deserved. "This is incredibly generous." Nash waved away his thanks. "I should have done more sooner. But I hope this is a start." He looked at his daughter, his expression softening. "I'm staying in town for a week. I'd like to spend more time with you and Hope if that's agreeable." "I'd like that very much," Nora said, her smile bright through her tears. Later that night, as they lay in bed discussing the unexpected turn of events, Levi marveled at the change in Nora. A weight seemed to have lifted from her, a shadow he hadn't even fully recognized until it was gone. "You're happy," he observed, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I am," she agreed. "I never thought my father would change, not really, but seeing him with Hope today." She shook her head in wonder. "Babies have a way of softening the hardest hearts, I suppose." "Speaking of babies," Levi said, a hint of nervousness in his voice, "I've been thinking. Hope is growing so fast and this house has plenty of room." Nora propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. "Levi Sloane, are you saying what I think you're saying? Would you consider having another child?" he asked. "A brother or sister for Hope? A baby that would be ours from the very beginning." Joy bloomed across Nora's face. "Yes," she whispered, pulling him close. "Yes, I would love that more than anything." As they sealed this new promise with a kiss, Levi marveled at how far they had come. From that fateful night in the stable, when he'd found a terrified young woman giving birth alone, to this moment of perfect contentment, their journey had been unexpected. Challenging at times, but ultimately more rewarding than he could have ever imagined. In the cradle beside their bed, Hope slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge, even in her infant understanding, that she was loved, protected, cherished. And in the years to come, as the Sloane family grew and flourished on their New Mexico ranch, that foundation of love would prove to be the most valuable inheritance of all. True to their hopes, the following spring brought news of another child on the way. Nora's pregnancy progressed without complications, much to everyone's relief. Her father visited regularly from Santa Fe, doting on Hope and taking an unexpected interest in ranch operations, occasionally offering business advice that proved surprisingly useful. The Wilson property became part of the expanded Sloane Ranch, allowing Levi to increase his herd and hire 2 ranch hands to help with the additional work. The prosperity brought by this expansion meant they could add a new wing to the house, including a proper nursery for Hope and the coming baby. On a crisp November morning in 1889, almost exactly 2 years after Hope's dramatic arrival, Nora gave birth to a son, Lucas Nicholas Sloane, a healthy boy with his father's strong features and his mother's determined spirit. Unlike his sister's birth, Lucas entered the world in the comfort of the Sloane home, with Doc Jensen attending and Levi holding Nora's hand throughout her labor. When the doctor placed the squalling infant in his father's arms, Levi felt a surge of emotion unlike anything he'd experienced before, even different from when he'd first held Hope. This child was part of him, part of Nora, physical proof of the love they'd found against all odds. "He's perfect," Levi whispered, bringing the baby to Nora's side. "Look what we made, sweetheart." Nora, exhausted but radiant, reached for her son with trembling hands. "Hello, Lucas," she murmured. "We've been waiting for you." 2-year-old Hope, allowed into the room to meet her brother, approached the bed with solemn curiosity. "Baby?" she asked, pointing a chubby finger at the bundle in her mother's arms. "Yes, darling," Nora confirmed. "This is your baby brother, Lucas. Can you say hello?" Hope regarded the infant critically for a long moment, then declared, "He's small," which sent the adults into much-needed laughter after the tension of the birth. As they settled into life as a family of 4, Levi often found himself pausing in the midst of everyday moments, struck by the unexpected fullness of his life. Watching Nora read stories to Hope with Lucas nestled against her breast. Hearing his children's laughter echo through rooms that had once been silent with grief. Falling asleep each night with his wife in his arms, secure in the knowledge that he was exactly where he was meant to be. On Hope's 5th birthday, they threw a proper celebration, inviting children from town and decorating the ranch house with paper streamers and wildflowers. As Levi watched his daughter so confident and bright, with no idea of the unusual circumstances of her birth, he felt an overwhelming gratitude for the twist of fate that had brought Nora to his stable that September night. Later, when the guests had gone and the children were tucked into bed, he found Nora on the porch, gazing up at the star-filled New Mexico sky. "Penny for your thoughts," he said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "I was just thinking about how different things might have been," she admitted, leaning back against his chest. "If I hadn't found your stable that night, if you hadn't heard me, or if I hadn't offered my name," Levi added, pressing a kiss to her temple. Nora turned in his arms to face him. "Do you ever regret it? Taking on another man's child, marrying a woman you barely knew?" Levi shook his head, his eyes never leaving hers. "Not for a single moment. Finding you and Hope was the best thing that ever happened to me, Nora Sloane. You saved me just as much as I saved you." She reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the familiar contours with tenderness. "I love you, Levi, more than I ever thought possible." "And I love you," he replied, the words as true now as the first time he'd spoken them. "Until the end of my days and beyond." As they stood together under the vast desert sky, the house behind them filled with the peaceful breathing of their sleeping children, Levi reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them to this point. From strangers thrust together by circumstance to partners united by choice. From a marriage of convenience to a bond of profound love, the stable where it all began still stood on their property, now expanded and improved, but still fundamentally the same structure. Sometimes, when Levi passed it, he would pause and remember that night, the fear in Nora's eyes, the miracle of Hope's birth, the impulsive offer that had changed all their lives forever. Some might call it chance or luck or coincidence, but Levi knew better. What had happened in that stable was nothing less than destiny, the beginning of a love story written in the stars long before either of them knew the other existed. And as the years passed, and their family flourished on the ranch outside Aztec, that love only deepened, weathering life's inevitable storms and growing stronger with each passing season. Hope and Lucas were joined by a sister, Emma Rose, in 1892, completing their family circle with her sunny disposition and boundless energy. Nicholas Nash eventually moved to Aztec permanently, building a smaller but still elegant home on a corner of the Wilson property, where he could be close to his daughter and grandchildren while maintaining his independence. His relationship with Levi evolved from wary respect to genuine friendship, the two men finding common ground in their love for Nora and the children, as well as their shared business acumen. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Levi surprised Nora with a proper gold wedding band to replace the simple silver one he'd hastily purchased for their makeshift ceremony. They renewed their vows in the same church where they'd first appeared as husband and wife, but this time surrounded by their children and the community that had embraced them fully. "Not bad for a marriage that started in a stable," Levi whispered to her as they danced under the stars at their anniversary celebration. Nora's laugh, still the most beautiful sound he knew, rang out clear and true. "The best things often have humble beginnings," she reminded him, her green eyes shining with happiness. "It's where they lead that matters." And as they moved together beneath the vast New Mexico sky, surrounded by the life they had built from that desperate night so long ago, both knew with absolute certainty that they had found their way home.